Good evening. Welcome to our May regular school board meeting. In accordance with an act to implement provisions necessary to the health, welfare, and safety of the citizens of Maine in response to the COVID-19 public health emergency, as enacted to read Section G11 MRSA, Section 403, Article A, public proceedings through remote access during the declaration of a state of emergency to COVID-19 and for 30 days following the termination of that state of emergency, the regular board meeting will be held through Google Meet. The meeting will be live streamed and available for viewing at www.MSAD11.org. Members of the public wishing to make comment are invited to do so during the public comment sections of the meeting and may call area code 207-582-5346 or send an email to schoolboard, capital S, capital B, schoolboard@msad11.org. In addition to the regular public comment section at the beginning of the board agenda, an additional public comment section has been added at the end of the agenda to provide the school board with the ability to answer questions sent to them during the meeting. Call to order. Pursuant to subsection 403A of MRSA, Maine State Revised Statutes Annotated, we will now confirm that each member of the MSAD 11 school board can hear and be heard. We will do this by calling the roll. Members present are asked to say yay. We ask all members to listen and report any audio difficulties when the roll is complete. Becky Fless, yay. Veronica Babcock,
Yay.
Nancy Fortier Brown,
Yay.
Linda Caputo,
Yay.
James Lothridge, Jim, I think you might be muted. Can you unmute him?
Yay.
Thank you, Jim. Matthew Marshall,
Yay.
Patrick Gothier, is Patrick on? Do we know, Carrie?
I don't see him on. Becky.
Okay, so he is absent. Melissa Tracy,
Yay.
John Umlin,
Yay.
Tony Veet,
Yay.
Kirsten Weed.
Yay. Oh, sorry, my dogs.
Hey, you're good. Yay. And Quentin Martin.
Yay.
Great, thank you. Administrative staff,
Pat Hopkins, Superintendent.
Andrea Dish, Business Manager.
Jack
Angela?
Kempton, High School Principal.
And
John
Angela,
Merrifield.
why don't I call people? I think it'll be easier if I call. So
Super.
Angela, please.
Angela Hardy, Director of Curriculum.
Christina,
Mute button.
Christina O'Neill, Principal at Pittston Randolph Consolidated School.
Alicia,
Alicia Morris, Director of Special Services.
John,
John LaPeria, Building Principal, Gardner Regional Middle School.
Josh. You need to unmute yourself. Josh, there you go.
Sorry, my button wasn't working. Josh Farr, Director of Adult Education.
Katie,
Katie Gould, Principal at Helen Thompson School.
Karen,
Karen Moody, Building Principal of Laura Richard School.
Terry,
Terry McGuire, Director of Technology.
And Vicky.
Vicky Dugay, Principal at Riverview Community School.
Great. And Andrea and Chad have already introduced themselves.
And Nate Stubbert, Athletic Director.
Oh, you weren't on my screen. Sorry. Thank you, Nate.
I have my camera shut off.
Gotcha.
But I'm here.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the
To
flag
the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Public comments for items on the agenda.
Yes, the school board received a public comment from a parent, Amanda Basbury, and I will read the comment. It says that I currently have two MSAD11 students, 8th and 11th grade. I applaud the district and its teachers' swift efforts to maintain a level of consistency for our students during this unprecedented time. As a parent who is now working full-time from home, I have observed a great deal of anxiety and frustration surrounding the amount of work and its implications on student grades. Knowing that many students are not participating in online learning or turning in work that is being assigned is frustrating for students who are putting forth the effort. With this portion of the school year now being past incomplete, we should look at not issuing any additional work to students after May 22nd and then giving students until June 5th to complete that work, thus allowing all students to complete the year with ample time to communicate with their teachers. I additionally have concerns about whether or not that incomplete work will ever actually be completed, and with no ramifications for students that are not completing work, why should others be working hard to complete theirs? Prolonging the school year does not appear to be benefiting my children, and carrying over work into the next year will create only more stress and concern. Let's draw a line in the sand, make accommodations where needed beyond the June 5th deadline, and stop pushing more work onto our students. No new work after May 22nd. Thank you, Amanda Basbury. That is the only email that I've received for public comment.
Okay. Prioritization and approval of agenda minutes.
Yes, I have one addition to the agenda. I would like to add on page 2 under correspondence, a letter of retirement that I received today from Marion Alexander. She is a kindergarten teacher at the Pittston Randolph Community School, and her retirement is effective the end of this school year.
Okay. May I have a motion, please, to approve the agenda as the established agenda format as adjusted, please?
So moved.
Moved by Tony, seconded by
Second.
Veronica. Okay. Motion by Tony, second by Veronica. All those in favor, I will go through the roll again. Becky Fless, yay. Veronica Babcock,
Yay.
Nancy Porter Brown,
Yay.
Linda Caputo,
Yay.
Jim Lockridge,
Yay.
Nancy Marshall,
Yay.
Patrick Saucier, absent. Alyssa Tracy,
Yay.
John Umland,
Yay.
Tony Beach,
Yay.
Kirsten,
Yay.
and Quentin.
Yay.
Thank you. I need a motion to approve minutes of the previous meetings, the regular board meeting of April 2nd, 2020. Motion to approve.
Motion to approve the meetings from April.
Motion by Alyssa, second.
Second.
Second by Jim. I'll call the roll. Becky Fluss, yay. Veronica Babcock,
Yay.
Nancy Porter Brown,
Yay.
Linda Caputo,
Yay.
James Lothridge,
Here.
Matthew
Yay.
Mark.
Yay.
Thank you. Alyssa Tracy,
Yay.
John Umlin,
Yay.
Tony Beat,
Yay.
Kirsten,
Yay.
and Quentin.
Yay.
Am I moving through the roll too fast? Is that okay for everyone? Okay,
Good with me.
thank you. Moving along then. Recognitions and celebrations, seeing none. Correspondence? As written?
As written.
Okay, thank you. Committee reports. Finance, so there was no capital area. CATC has not met. Curriculum has not met. Dropout prevention has not met. We had a finance committee meeting on Tuesday and went over the budget and approved the budget. And I would ask for Andrea to walk us through that.
So since our last budget meeting, you have received an email from Pat. I have found an error in my spreadsheet. So I apologize for the error that I made. Fortunately for us, the error was in the district's favor. If you look at the worksheet that I prepared, at the very bottom of the worksheet, it lists last year's assessments for each of the 4 towns, therefore giving us the amount of increase for each year in the proposed budget. Unfortunately, my spreadsheet did not recalculate, and it looked at the assessments from 2 years ago. So rather than what was presented at the Finance Committee on Tuesday night, those increases to the towns were incorrect. You have since received 2 new spreadsheets. The first spreadsheet will show listing, I'm going to bring it up in front of me, what the corrected spreadsheet would look like, the increase based on the comparison to last year's assessment. So if you have that spreadsheet in front of you, the overall increase to the 4 towns was minus 2.93%, or $292,707.06. So after Pat and I discussed, we decided that perhaps this was a time for us to look at some of those positions that we were unable to add during our conversation on Tuesday. So Pat, I don't know if you want to chime in about what positions we're looking at, but we decided 300,000, and I will let her share with you the positions she decided, or we discussed, and based on the administrator's discussions. And then I will talk about the impact based on that addition to the budget. Does that sound?
So, yes, thank you, Andrea. I'd like to step back first, though, and just for the audience and for all board members, as a reminder that the budget that was presented on Tuesday night and approved by the Finance Committee represented an increase over the current year of 0.69%, or a total of $177,000. $865.92. And the document that Andrea just mentioned, the impact to taxpayers, at the time, we discussed the fact that the impact was going to be a little over $300,000 increase. So as a result of this correction, we're going from a $300,000 increase to taxpayers down to a decrease of $292,000. Okay, so that's a pretty significant spread. So at the finance meeting, it was brought up by a number of board members, their disappointment that we weren't able to build in a much needed elementary social worker, a much needed math coach, and a much needed literacy coach. So wanted to talk to you tonight about the possibility of adding those positions adding those positions to the budget. As we think about the impact of COVID-19 and the supports that students and staff are going to need when we return to school, we feel that those could be incredibly beneficial. If that money is added into the budget that you approve, that would bring the total budget to, there's a lot of backlashing. I don't know if there's someone's mic is on, but there's a lot of feedback. So I don't know if anyone has their mic on, if they could turn it off, please. So the addition of the 300,000, what that would do is it would bring your bottom line budget to an increase of 1.86, which equates to 477,865.92. And what that would mean for taxpayers, that the impact for taxpayers would be spread across the 4 communities, a total of $7,292.94, which represents a 0.07% increase. So that's basically a flat impact to taxpayers. However, it's going to look different per town. For Gardner, we're looking at an increase in their share of $610. Yet for Pittston, we're looking at a 0.5% increase, which is the equivalent of $10,858. For Randolph, it would be a decrease of 0.67% or $6,389. And for West Gardner, it would be an increase of $2,200 or 0.07%. So we're hoping that we could engage in this conversation this evening and get some input and feedback from the board regarding our proposal.
I just want to say, it's Veronica, sorry, I turned my camera off. I am so excited about putting those positions in. I think that while it still is an increase, it is a minimal increase considering the need for those positions. We needed them before COVID-19, and we're definitely going to need them after. So I totally support it, and I'm very excited about it.
I have a question for Andrea, please.
Go ahead, Jim.
How do you come to these numbers? How did we get so skewed out of place with Pittston going up over $10,000, Randolph going down over $6,000, Gardner just status quo? Explain that to me.
So remember the assessment.
No, I don't remember anything. Explain it to me.
Sure. So the assessments are based on the valuation and the percentage of overall valuation. So it depends on the amount that each town's valuation increases or decreases. So I'm trying to bring up the spreadsheet. So if you look at the valuation, Pittston's increase was the largest out of the 4 towns between the last state valuation and this state valuation. Theirs went up 2.97%. The next one was 2.531%. So the way that the allocations are charged, it's based on your percentage of the total valuation. So it's according to state guidelines. So unfortunately, there's nothing that I can do or we can do about the amount charged to Pittston. It's their percentage of the 4 communities.
What did you say our percentage was increase?
Your increase was 2.974%. Your
2.9.
overall percentage is 21.67% of the total. So in years past, we've had the same scenario where the other towns have decreased and one town increased. And unfortunately, to bring the town underneath or to see that one town see a decrease, you would have to whack a lot from the budget, far more than the overall increase to Pittston. It's not like I can just decrease Pittston's. I would have to decrease everyone's valuation. So it requires large cuts to be able to do that. So
I don't have my specs from last meeting, from yesterday's meeting or Tuesday's meeting, but I didn't remember us being so far skewed. I knew we were higher, but I certainly didn't know that one was going to be higher and one was going to be a negative. Everybody had an increase.
Yep, everybody did, but it's the overall percentage of the increase, the amount that your evaluation increased over and above the others. I think 5 years ago or 6 years ago, we had the same problem with West Gardner. The valuation in West Gardner was going up, and we wanted to make sure that all 4 towns, if 3 of them were going to see a decrease, then we wanted all 4 towns to see a decrease. And trying to look at what we would have needed to cut to get West Gardner below any increase, it was hundreds of thousands of dollars. I have not calculated what it would take to get Pittston, what we would need to cut to get Pittston below 0, but we just can't decrease one town. They all have to be decrease equitably according to state valuation. I don't know if that answers your question, but
not satisfactorily. I don't buy it at all, frankly. I don't understand a negative in a situation where we all had a positive. Now one has a negative and one has almost nothing. And Pittston is taking up all the slack for most of the. So we'll talk about this later, but I'm really unhappy about it.
Unfortunately, I hear what you're saying, and because it's guided by state statute, unfortunately, there isn't much I can do. The state statute is set, and so is the valuation of each community. So the percentage that I'm required to charge each of the towns is established that way. So
can you send me your calculations on this so I can look at them and understand? Because I do not understand this at all.
Absolutely.
So you were supposed to send me something from last meeting and I didn't get it.
The carry forward. Yeah, yes. I will send you that.
Can I get both of those in a pretty quick hurry?
I will send them to everybody.
Okay. All right.
Other questions or comments about the budget, please?
Yeah, so this is John. I just have a quick question. I'm in total support of the positions, but the one concern I do have is we have no clue what we will be getting for state funding the following year, right? So what happens with these positions in coming years when we know there's going to be a downturn in state revenues? It's inevitable that state budgets are going to go down. So now we're adding positions that are, very needed. I'm definitely not saying that in any way or trying to insinuate that in any way, but it just concerns me that we're bringing on people in like where would we make those adjustments then in future years if there's a significant downturn?
It's a good question, John. I don't have an answer as to where we would look for the money. If there is a downturn, which I agree with you, we are anticipating some type of curtailment that will happen moving forward. There are so many moving parts to the budget that we would look at every element of it, depending on enrollment. That will play an impact. We just start fresh at the beginning of every budget season and look at everything that we have and make a decision and prioritize what we need. The risk does exist that we will say in a year, 2 years, that there are positions that we're unable to maintain. That risk is there. That's why we have probationary periods as well, so that we have the opportunity, should we need to reduce those positions. It's not necessarily ideal, but it is part of the process. I wish I had a better answer. We really need these positions, but I just can't guarantee, nor can I forecast right now what the budget situation is going to look like in a year, 2 years, 3 years.
Thank you, John. Other comments?
This is Linda. I totally agree with Veronica, and I'm very excited to see the positions back in the budget.
I just wanted to say that I do understand what John and Tony are saying, but we have to think about next year. We have to think about the kids coming back and their needs. And like Pat said, things will work out with probationary teachers. School may look very different in the future with more virtual learning, which in some sense would be less teachers. So, I just think we have to focus on the students for next year. And I feel like this is a gift, getting this extra money, even though I know it's not extra. So again, that's my 2 cents. I'll stop talking.
I have a statement here. When you get
Hey, after Jim, can I go?
Yes, Jim and then
Is
Matthew.
it okay? All right. I agree with John. I don't think we might be able to, I think it might not be a bad idea to add a social worker. I think that's probably the most, but the others I think we should wait on. And I don't see I don't see it, the $300,000. It looks to me like we've just added in $300,000 to what we're asking the taxpayers to pay. I don't understand how we went from Thursday at 6.9% to today at 1.86% increase. I don't think we should. I'm opposed to it. And I don't like finding out. It should have come forward, and I realize there are mistakes made, but this should have come at the Finance Committee. Thank you.
Becky, may I speak? May I address Jim?
Yes. Yep.
Jim, I only discovered the error yesterday morning at around 11 a.m. So if there was an error at Tuesday night's finance meeting, I certainly would have brought it to your attention. I apologize for the error. I'm glad that I caught it. But if I would have had the error, if I would have known about the error at Tuesday's finance meeting, I would have absolutely shared it with you. As soon as I found the error, I called Pat and we discussed. I then believe that she shared the 2 spreadsheets that I shared with her, with the board, so that they would be aware of the situation so that we could better discuss this evening. I apologize that I made the mistake, and it is nobody's mistake but mine.
Yeah, I'm not laying blame at your feet. What I'm saying is that maybe we should have had another meeting before we come to the board to make this whole thing come to pass. And I don't see if you, and I don't understand, you say you found $300,000 in the board's or the school district's favor, or are we just adding $300,000 so we can have these positions filled?
So, Jim, the budget itself didn't change. I did not make a mistake in the budget. The budget is correct. The mistake that I made is at the bottom of that worksheet that shows the increase from last year to the proposed budget for each of the 4 towns. What I didn't realize is that calculation didn't update, and what it had in there instead was the assessments from 1819 as opposed to 1920. So when I put the figures from this year into the budget, it came to a decrease of 293,000. I don't have it in front of me. I checked it another way. And then as soon as I realized that that's what had in fact happened, I called Pat to tell her that I had made a mistake.
Okay.
We briefly discussed, and then she asked me to send the spreadsheets to her, which I believe she then shared with you.
Okay, so the fact that we have the mistake in the town, how the assessment was applied to the towns was in error. I can understand that. But what I can't understand is why we have decided to put $300,000 more into the budget to fund these positions. I don't understand that.
Jim, I haven't added any more. The budget has not changed since you last looked at it, or since it was last presented at finance on Tuesday night. I have updated the spreadsheet to show you the correct increase or decrease to each town. Based on the conversation at the finance committee meeting, I estimated the amounts that we would need for some of the positions that were discussed. And Pat named some of them. Also, we have a special ed position that's being added later in this meeting, and there really isn't enough from 2 ed techs to cover that position. So I'm actually looking at covering 4 positions with the increase of 300,000. So that is what the discussion is, but it has not been decided.
Okay.
And can I respond as well? So, Jim, the reason that we or I am putting forth this discussion is during finance committee, there were members of the school board that were expressing their disappointment that these other positions weren't in. And so because of that, we were attempting to respond to those individuals and say, hey, we now have a situation where the impact of taxpayers is coming in lower than what we had discussed. So there is a potential opportunity to add into the budget the positions that we've all identified as being needed. That is entirely the decision of the board. Now, one thing that we can do, I hear some frustration here a bit and some uncertainty. At the finance meeting last week, we indicated that we would need to schedule another finance meeting because we needed to review the adult ed budget and we still needed to review the food service budget. You do not have to take a vote on this budget tonight if you don't wish. If you wish to continue the conversation at next week, I'm hoping to schedule that finance next Tuesday, and you want to table it and move it to next week so that you can talk about it in a little more detail, that's the decision of the board as well. And that's perfectly fine. We can do that.
I believe I'm absolutely in lockstep with John in that I don't think we should be increasing our budget this year because I think we're going to see some cuts. I would love to have these positions. I think a literacy coach is absolutely needed. The social worker, absolutely needed. But the fact is, I don't think this is the year to do it. And the social worker this year, I think it's probably, we bite the bullet and we do it. But I don't think we should go to the other ones because we don't know how the literacy coach, and I see heads being shook, but I don't see it and I oppose it. So thank you.
Matthew?
So Pat, quick question. The teacher that put their letter in for retirement, the kindergarten teacher from Pittston, was that something that was planned? Did we know that was going to happen, or is that just something happened today?
That happened today.
Okay, so the issue that, or the question that I'm going to have, and I brought this up at the finance committee meeting on Tuesday evening, was the suggestion that we cut back via not attrition, but a position in West Gardner at Helen Thompson, and for with a probationary teacher. Is that something that you've changed your mind about? Is that something that you're going to continue to suggest we consider? Where are you at with that? Do you know?
Well, still in the budget, we have the reduction of 3 teaching positions. And so 2 of those positions are at Helen Thompson, and one of those positions is at Pittston. And one at Pittston is grade 3, and the one at Helen Thompson is grade 3, or both going into grade 4. And so by eliminating both of those positions, their class sizes are going to be comparable. If you add a position back into the budget, then you're going to have one school with smaller class sizes than the other school. So you would have one school with about probably class sizes of around 16 or 17, versus in another building, you would have class sizes of 23, 24.
Yeah, well, my opinion is a smaller class size is not a bad thing, right? But I guess my point would be is if a teacher that is within a probationary period is let go because of their performance, that's one thing, in my opinion, and this is just Matt's opinion. That's one thing. We should absolutely consider letting somebody go if they're not doing their job. But I am not a big fan of, and I do not support cutting a position with a probationary teacher to save money in the budget. I am not a proponent of that. I don't think that's a good idea. I think that we're smart enough where we could move teachers, or instead of cutting a probationary teacher, maybe offer them a position to go somewhere else to teach if we have class sizes that are disproportionate. So as it sits right now, I am not in support of that part of the budget. Now, I know this is sort of your baby. You deal a lot with the probationary teacher stuff and all of those decisions, but it is part of the budget. So it does have something to do with the school board and the decision that we make. So I'm just not in support of cutting a probationary teacher for no other reason other than budgetary issues in any budget year, period.
And so to respond, the high school position that's being eliminated, the person in that position is also a probationary teacher. Okay, so we're not talking about a probationary teacher only at the elementary school. We're talking about one at the high school as well. And I just can't talk about individuals and the reasons why an individual may be selected over another individual. Those are personnel matters. And so it's just not a conversation, Matt, that I can have here publicly as to why we've selected who we've selected, or whether it's based on only a reduction in class sizes, or whether it's related to other matters. I just can't discuss that.
Oh, I get it. I understand absolutely, but I'm uncomfortable making any decision without knowing. It bothers me.
But
Yeah,
I can't tell you.
I understand, but when you have somebody that you hire and they understand that it's a 2-year probationary period, correct?
It was a 3-year probationary period. It's decreasing to a 2-year probationary period.
So let's just say 2 years for all practical purposes, and they do everything that they're asked to do above and beyond. They do a great job. They hold up their end of the bargain, and then due to budget issues, we just say, no, thank you. I just don't think it's fair. And and I realize that in the state of Maine, it's an at-will state. You can let somebody go for any reason or no reason. And I understand that, but it bothers me that we're talking about hiring other people in other positions because of the budget, like the special ed teacher, a social worker, and one other position, but we're talking about potentially axing, and I don't mean to use axing, but doing away with a probationary teacher that I don't know whether they've done their job or they don't. Only you do. But my point would be, if I don't know, it's hard for me to make that decision.
Well, and that's where it comes with Matt. that the administrators work collaboratively to make that decision, and that you charge me and you hire me and employ me to make those decisions. And so, we can continue to talk about that. The positions that we're discussing here with the reduction in classroom teachers, that's different from special ed and the needs for a special ed teacher at the middle school. There are different requirements there in terms of legalities for contacts, the number of contacts, the case management that those teachers are responsible for. And so that proposal has nothing to do with the reduction in the classroom teachers. The addition of a social worker, again, that's a need that's not being met. And we are concerned with our students returning in the fall and the need for some additional supports. That has nothing to do with the classroom position. And then with the coaching positions, those are needed positions to support our staff. And again, that has nothing to do with the decline in enrollment, which is resulting in a decline in classroom teachers. Now, you guys absolutely have the authority to, of course, add back in additional teachers if you want to have the smaller class sizes. If you do that, we very carefully administratively looked at class sizes across the district, and we tried to make sure that they were comparable. If you add one position back in, now they're not comparable between Pittston and Randolph and Helen Thompson. You're going to have one school that will have much lower class sizes than the other school. So if you don't want to reduce teaching positions due to the decline in enrollment, then maybe you're looking at adding back in 2 teaching positions and not just 1.
Yeah, I see your point, Pat, but like I said, I just don't, we go out and we hire teachers and we put them through this probationary period. And at the end of the day, in this instance, because it is part of the budget consideration, it is sort of on us to decide whether we want to approve it or not. And by approving the budget, we're basically saying this, both probationary teachers, as far as I know, due to budgetary constraints, are down the road. And I have an issue with that. That's all. I'll stop talking.
I hear you.
And Matt, just to be clear, and I know you and I've talked about this a little bit, that's a term in negotiations called riffing. It's the last in, first out. And every teacher that comes in under a probationary contract, that's part of the contract that they sign. They sign a probationary contract. And while it's not friendly and sweet necessarily, they absolutely know that coming in. And my belief is, as I've said to you earlier, that I know our superintendent does everything she can to make sure that anyone who is not brought back for whatever reason is sent off well, so that they are sent off to improve and find employment. It's not punitive, because that would be illegal to be punitive in that way. And it's hard because they are people, but we have to look at positions, and there's a reason we don't know who the people are, because that would make it even more difficult. It's our job to fill positions and not personalities. That's what the board's job is. I don't know if you have anything else here. If you want to rebut, that's fine.
No, I get it. It's just, unfortunately, it's not a perfect world, right? But like I said, I just think if we put all our money in the basket for them to do a great job, and then all of a sudden we have some issues, it's just unfortunate. I just wanted to put that out. That's all.
And I appreciate your sensitivity to that very much. And you're right. And it's not perfect. It's not perfect. Alyssa and then Jim.
Thanks, Becky. I kind of had a similar comment to what Matt had, but I think we've answered it. So I'm going to let that one go. I was just going to say in general, Pat, when we see the correspondence of folks that are have effectively given their retirement, you would go through your usual personnel matter anyway to reinstate or hire someone to fill their position beyond what we knew from the budget meeting earlier this week, right? That's just your normal process.
If we have, when we have a position that opens, if we have staff that we feel would be an appropriate fit for those positions and that's a position that they want, yes, we will move people around internally. If we do not, then we will open the position up. We will allow current staff members to submit letter of interests, and then we will accept applications from outside the district as well. Does
Perfect.
that
Thank
answer
you.
your question?
It does. Yep. Thank you. And then I was just going to comment, I know to Jim and others' comments about the math. I was just pulling out Tuesday's math to kind of look it through, and I was on the Randolph Town website to look at things. And I can appreciate having been through the same situation, Andrea, when a formula just doesn't work. And unfortunately, that's where we're at. So I just still want to give kudos to the folks that were, again, inventive and just coming up with a way to satisfy what we did ask for. And I think we can talk about it more. I don't think I'm ready to vote either, but I think now we've got more of the details. So thanks, Becky.
Jim?
Yes. Can you hear me? Yes. I agree with Matt that I am not in favor of using, or not using, but cutting a probationary teacher just because of a budgetary need. When we hire anybody, we make a commitment to them that if they're going to, I feel, if they're going to do their job and do it well, we will be hopefully taking them for the many, many years to come. They will be working for the MSAD11. If they're not working out, that there's something that doesn't click, then that's fine. We have the opportunity to say it's not a good fit. You move, you can find, we'll help you find, we'll give you a good recommendation, but we're not going to rehire you here. But because we have a restriction, and then at the same breath, we just added in, we're talking about adding in 3 or more additional positions. And I know they're needed. I'm somewhat flexible on them, but I think this is not the time. I'm not ready to vote on this. I agree with Matt. I don't think we should, with the opportunity of one person giving another resignation letter that we weren't anticipating, is there any way we can adjust staff? Maybe not that would, maybe we can bring a teacher from West Gardner to Pittston or vice versa. I don't know, but I think there's an opportunity there. Put that, I don't know what they are or who they are. It doesn't matter. If we can keep them on board, if they're a good probationary teacher, we want good teachers for the future. So that's my feeling, and I'm not ready to vote yet. Thank you.
So I would suggest that we table it. I was going to propose tonight that we have a finance meeting next Tuesday night to discuss adult ed and the food service budget. So we should table this and continue the conversation there. I will just add as a reminder that all the decisions made or all of the recommendations made to the board regarding staffing levels were based on your class size policy. So if you are feeling differently about your class size policy and feeling like that shouldn't be taken into consideration when we're building the budget, then that's a conversation that we need to have, because it was administrators' intent to abide by your policy. So that's just something for us to kind of keep in mind and then talk about moving forward. Because we certainly don't want to put staff through this either if you have a different feeling about the policy that you've established. Okay, so Becky, I would recommend that we table this until Tuesday, given everyone's feedback.
That seems fine with me.
Okay.
Moving along, policy. There was no meeting and no first reads or rescinds. There are some policies for a second read. May I have a motion to accept them as a group?
I move that we accept them as a group.
Is that Linda?
Yes.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
Nancy,
Yeah.
thank you. All right, then, I will go through. The policies. Okay, Becky Fless, yes. Veronica Babcock,
Yes.
Nancy Fortier Brown,
Yes.
Linda Caputo,
Yes.
Jim Lockridge,
Yes.
Matthew Marshall,
Yes.
Patrick Saucier's not here. Alyssa Tracy,
Yes.
Don Umlin,
Yes.
Tony Veet,
Yes.
Kirsten Weed,
Yes.
and Quentin Martin.
Yes.
Thank you. Let's see. Student representatives, no meeting, no meeting. New business.
Becky,
Yes, ma'am.
since the student representatives are here, while they may not have submitted a report, I would suggest that we ask them to provide us a little input, a little insight into how their lives are going right now as they work remotely from home. Is that okay?
That's a great idea. Kirsten, would you like to go first?
Yes, sorry. So I will say I found it quite challenging. For the first week, first couple weeks, I found that I was getting more work than I had during school. So I found that to be really hard. And on top of that, like, I think it's interesting, just little things that you don't think about. Like, I used to always just like have breakfast and lunch made, like just made like I had cold lunch. So now you have to add like even the time I'm spending cooking. I have like my job still. I've been applying for a lot of scholarships and like I've had to figure out everything for college. Like this time is like really stressful on top of the whole virus. So add that to like the work. First, it's been really challenging. I've talked with quite a few, at least seniors, that are feeling very similar to the way I'm feeling. Like I understand for us, like at least AP classes, like we still are having the exam, so I understand why we're still getting work. But at the same time, I'm struggling with like in my other classes, I feel like I'm getting a lot of busy work and I'm not really learning anything productive. And so I'm just like given a video and then answering like a few questions about it, or quite a few questions about it, things like that, that I just don't really find to be productive to my learning, in my opinion. And I know a lot of other people feel the same way and like on everything still. So it's been really like you can't exactly like, just go and have a conversation with your teachers all the time. Like if you have a question, you have to email and wait for correspondence back. And so it's just like a lot more of a process. So I found it quite challenging. And then on top of that, talking with a lot of kids, like, because I've been in a lot of group chats with other colleges that I've been interested in. And some kids are just having like pass fail classes. If they were like passing before the epidemic happened, then they are just fine for the rest of the semester. I know some schools aren't even like having work. So it's been difficult to manage all of that. And on top of like, I know, again, talking to a lot of other people, like mental health is a really difficult thing for a lot of people right now. So finding like the motivation to, do all of that homework and stuff, it's kind of like, so we've gotten so much kind of taken away from us. But then the one thing that we already struggled with before, homework and a lot of work was the one thing we still have. So it's just hard, like not really knowing. I know like there's no graduation plans now, but like knowing, our sports season got taken away, our prom, our snowball, everything just to get taken away, but then still have like the loads of work that we have, it just kind of gets a little frustrating, and it's hard to have motivation to do work to the same level. And with it, but like I understand as a district, you guys have, requirements you need to meet. And so I totally get that. And I know teachers are doing the best that they can. So like no judgment there at all, but just from like student perspective, it has been really challenging. But that's what I'll say on that.
Thank you, Kirsten. And we know it's been challenging, and, I'm sorry that the seniors are in this situation where you're not able to experience all of those very important senior year events. And so we know that that's a real loss, and it's sad. We will be talking in a little bit about graduation, where we're still trying to do what we can to make sure that we celebrate all of you and try to recognize you as best we can, given the circumstances that we need to work within. So we appreciate you doing your best and recognizing that the board, the district, we do have legal requirements. Staff are working as hard as they can.
Yeah.
This is new for them too. It's really hard, and many of them are learning for the first time how to instruct over using a video, creating a Google Classroom. And then they have children at home that they're trying to help provide their own education, or, so we're all kind of in this situation. So I'm glad you're doing okay. I'm sorry that it's really stressful. I hope your work is still going well, and that's a little bit of a release for you.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm really excited because I have college all figured out. So that's kind of less
Good.
stressful for me. I know where I'm going, and that's
Good.
a big weight off my shoulders. But yeah, and I know this whole senioritis thing, it's like amped up times 100. So that's also been hard with it.
Yeah, we understand. Is Quentin, do you want to add in?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, I'm in no position like as I'm not. You can't compare me to the seniors because I still have one more year. I get to go back to school hopefully next year, and I get to have a final season of all these different things, and the seniors don't get that. So obviously my heart goes out to them, and that's awful, and I wouldn't wish that upon myself selfishly. So as far as work goes, I agree with Kirsten. It's a lot of busy work and things like that. And with like also, I mean, it's not my senior year, but not having prom and not having sports and not having all these things, that is, I guess, for lack of a better term, it's like a bummer. And to then continue to do school, and do all the work and not have any of the play, if you will, that stinks. And with the whole how this semester doesn't count towards our GPA and any of that stuff, sometimes personally, as a very, I guess you could call it dedicated student, I work very hard. Sometimes when I'm doing all of this work and I know that it doesn't mean anything, well, it's not that it doesn't mean anything, because I know that education is very important, but at the same time, when I'm doing all this work to keep my grades up, that I take pride in having good grades, but if they're not the grades that I'm working so hard for, if they don't count towards bringing up my own GPA or boosting my class rank, that sort of thing, it's just hard to motivate sometimes. But it's it's just a crappy situation. There's just nothing. I understand that there's not really much we can do. We are just is you just have to keep going. You got to keep on keeping on, and yeah, I guess that's like where I stand on all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. We just have to keep on keeping on. It is a crappy situation. And everyone is working hard to do the best they can to try to get through it. I appreciate you working hard to still stay focused on your academics. It is important, and you will be the winner. As time goes along, you will see that it was worth your time to remain dedicated and vigilant with your academics. So.
And it is hard to do, but I think Pat, you're right. It's important whether this semester counts or not. It's really important for your next steps, what it is you want to do in the future, and the information that you're learning as you're participating in your classes even now. That information that you're taking in is going to be important for your future, even though it may not feel as though it is.
Yeah, of course. I get that. I wasn't. I didn't.
I don't think it. Yeah, I didn't think you were complaining. I'm glad that you're doing it. So, thank you for being good sports. Next on the agenda is laptops.
No, we need to talk about the last day of school
calendar. The school. I'm sorry.
Right.
Back on. Yes. The 2019-2020 school calendar, last day of school.
Yes, so I have been working with my colleagues around the Kennebec Valley area, as well as working with administrators to help determine when our last day of school should be.
Charging battery.
There's a recognition that we have staff members who are going to have to spend a considerable amount of time preparing for next year. We also have staff who on a Sunday realized or were told that school was shut down, and they have not yet had a chance to go back into their classroom to pack things up and close down for the year. So based upon that, I am going to put forward a proposal that kind of banks some workshop days for teachers. So we sent to you in your packet the copy of the current calendar and next year's calendar. Prior to any snow days this year, the last day of school was on June 10th, and the last workshop day was on June 11th. We then had 6 snow days. What I would like to propose, and again, administratively, we've discussed this, is that for seniors, the last day of instruction would be May 29th. Then the seniors would have the first week of June to kind of finalize their work, wrap it up, finish it up, do what they need to do. Everyone else, the last day of school would be June 5th for new instruction. Then on the 8th, the 9th, and the 10th of the following week, that would be a time where students who still needed to finish work could work with their teachers to complete assignments. That's when the laptops could be handed back in. If there were any materials that students had that were at school, they would be able to collect all of their items. And so that the official last day of school would be the 10th. We would then have teacher workshops on the 11th, the 12th, the 15th, and the 16th. And we have yet to design those days, but we'll be working with representatives of the Teachers Association along with the administration to look at the type of work that needs to be done to close out this year and again to prepare for next year. We don't know what next year is going to look like, but we do know that students will not have been in school for 6 months. There's going to need to be time to analyze the curriculum and to look at what standards were not met and how do we determine which standards need to be pulled into next year's curriculum. So some of that work needs to be done. Would look at waiving one workshop day for teachers, not for our hourly employees, but for teachers, in recognition of all of the work that they had to do immediately to teach themselves how to create classroom instruction remotely. There were many who had never videotaped a class. They didn't know how to do Google Classroom. A lot of that work happened on their own time outside of the school day, because once we shut down, the teachers were prepping and preparing almost immediately. We had packets out to families 2 days later. So all of the time that they spent teaching themselves, a comp day would help recognize their time. That would leave 2 additional workshop days that would be carried forward to August. And so presently, next year's calendar shows that teachers and staff would return on Wednesday, the 26th of August. I would propose that they return on the 24th. And so they're here the 24th, the 25th, 26th, 27th to give us 4 days to do preparation. So with this, I worked with the president of the association to get feedback from staff, from teachers on how they felt about this. They certainly do not want to cut into their summertime. They've been working hard, they're tired, and they've already made plans, of course, based on the calendar that we've previously established. But we believe that carrying forward just the 2 days into August would be respectful of our teachers, their need for a summer break, and will still be provide us the additional workshop and times that we need at the beginning of the school year to make sure we're prepared for students and staff to return. So that's my recommendation. And can I add one more thing? Sorry, Becky. It is essential that the board, that you vote on the final day. I have to send that vote to the Commissioner of Education and ask for a waiver, because technically this means that students will not be in school the required 175 days. So the commissioner will give us a waiver, but we also have to be able to explain the number of days that we are not going to be providing instruction. So kind of to respond to the parent who expressed some concern about the length of time that we're providing instruction, I think it would be difficult for me to explain and get approval to end instruction for students as early as May 22nd. I think making May 29th for seniors is reasonable, and making it the 5th for everyone else is also reasonable. Please keep in mind as well that while the high school students began learning or receiving new instruction, I don't remember how many weeks ago now, the elementary students are just receiving their packets. They received it this week. So to shut off new instruction in 2 weeks would be, I think, do a disservice to our elementary students. And it would be really unfair to our elementary faculty and staff who work so hard to pull that new instruction together. To have that in place for only 2 weeks would be unfortunate. I don't know if there's any administrators who would like to add to my comments. Okay.
Board members, any questions, comments? I did have a conversation with the parent who wrote the email to us, and her concern is the sheer, and I don't know because I'm not a parent of, well, I am a parent of a high school senior. Her concern was the sheer volume of emails that her kids are receiving, and that they're just really not accustomed to doing work that way. And having one student who's a really a strong student and very much worrying about wanting to have 100 average in every class. So balancing 150 emails a day, and then the other child who is less of a high achiever, having the same. So one feeling stressed by the overabundance, the other feeling buried by it. So it's the yin and the yang. And I don't know if I wouldn't pretend to have an answer, because I'm not the classroom teacher, but I don't know if there's any way that the building administrators of these two kids could uh, be just have knowledge about that. And I don't know if there's anything that can be done.
I would encourage any parent whose child is struggling, whether it's struggling with the workload, the type of work that they're receiving, absolutely reach out to your children's teachers or reach out to the building administrator and speak to them directly, and they can help support the family and the students. I know that teachers and administrators are doing their absolute best to support all families, recognizing that it's a difficult situation and each family has a um, unique factors that they're trying to deal with in their lives. And so all of the administrators and teachers, to my knowledge, have been very, very supportive. So any parent who's listening, that's the route that I would encourage you to take.
And would it be appropriate if they send an email to the instructor to also CC the building administrator, just so that if they wanted to be having a conversation, they could be doing that? Or
Absolutely, absolutely.
great, thank you for that. Jim, you had a comment?
Yes, I've watched two of my daughters who are both teachers go through this process, and one on the telephone, one in person. But they have, not just they, but all teachers that have gone through this have done a phenomenal job to get on board with either new education or enrichment. And it's a tough, tough thing. I have no problem with any type of reward as far as one less day, 2 less days of these of their in-service days. I think we do whatever we can to work with them, because I know I watched my daughter here probably spend for the first 2 days getting all their packets together, probably about her husband and her both working, just stuffing papers, probably 10, 12 hours for 2 days in a row. And it's a hard job. So I kudos to all of them, all teachers. So thank you. That's the only comment I have. I like the schedule that Pat's come up with. I think it's a good one. But the more we can do for these teachers that have done so much over and above board, we should do it. Thank you.
Alyssa, you had a comment?
Thanks, Becky. I'll second what Jim just said as well. I have 2 children in home with me and 2 in college doing this remotely. So got a broad spectrum from pre-K to 4th year pharmacy doctorate to give perspective. And it's been quite amazing to see like the pre-K kids get on with their instructor and do some moving and reading and then actually get back to finishing the alphabet, right? Which seems so instrumental, but you just assume kids get that, right? And then my 5th grade student who kind of just took to it really well, but she's that student anyway, and I get that. And I can appreciate that the teachers are not only emailing them, but emailing the parents as well to say, here's what we're planning. And that's gone really well, just to know what we're expecting. And she can kind of manage that on her own and reach out if she needs. Lastly, I would just say I appreciate again Pat's thoughtfulness in this whole schedule. I think it makes sense. It's kind of the only area of normalcy for a lot of these kids to think school still goes to June and these are the things we need to learn. It's hard to say it is normal under the circumstances. I get that. But I think if we can try to at least make them feel like they've accomplished what they needed to at the end of this year for this school year, that will help us to whatever we get to for the fall, so thank you for that.
Thank you. And the sheer volume of extra steps that all of these things take. It's not, people stand in front of the class and present is not happening anymore, which our kids are so accustomed to, and our staff as well. So all the sheer volume of emails and phone calls and Google Meets and all the extra time, I can't, kudos to all of you, and I can't even imagine where your energy comes from. It's exhausting. I'm believing it's exhausting, and I'm very appreciative to all of you for hanging in there. So we need to vote. I need a motion, please, to vote on the last day of school.
I move we choose the last day of school as articulated by Pat, the superintendent.
Motion by Tony, second.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Matt. All right, then I will go through the roll. Becky Flood, yes. Veronica Babcock,
Yes.
Nancy Whittier Brown,
Yes.
Linda Caputo,
Yes.
Jim Lothridge,
Yes.
Matthew Marshall,
Yes.
Patrick, not here. Alyssa Tracy,
Yes.
John Umland,
Yes.
Tony Beat,
Yes.
Kirsten,
Yes.
and Quentin.
Yes.
Great. Thank you guys very much for that. Next on the agenda is laptops for seniors.
Okay, so I'm going to turn this conversation over to Terry McGuire. Before I do, I just want to remind the board that last year, as a school district, we made a switch from having Macs for our high school students, and we switched over to Chromebooks. As a result of that process, we opened up the possibility of our seniors at that time being able to purchase laptops. And so Terry wants to talk today about how that should look for this year's seniors. Terry.
Hi, all. For the last few years, we've given the seniors who are actually graduating, not just seniors, but the ones that are graduating, the opportunity to purchase their laptop computer on their way out. What I would like to talk about tonight is actually not giving them their laptop to purchase, but actually just letting them take their laptop and not bring it back to us. Usually we make them bring it back to us, we reformat it, and then we give it back to them. It would make our lives in the technology department a lot easier. But in addition, the laptops in most instances are 9 years old. And if you think about it, that's a pretty old laptop. Really, the monetary value is pretty low. There are a few that are 8 years old, but most of them are 9 years old. So tonight, I'd like to discuss with you the opportunity to give the laptops to the seniors at no cost. Thoughts?
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, that's
They're
amazing.
old. You're not going to get any money out of them. If
Nope.
they're usable, give them to them.
Yep.
They've
I
had a
agree.
hard enough time this year.
They've already got them. Good luck getting the money. But no, having said that in a joking way, I think that this is a very great, a good gesture. And they are older Macs, but they're still fast and they're still good machines, and it'll get kids a good start in college, and that's what we're hoping to do.
The kids who have kept good care of their laptops will at least be able to use them in college for a year or two. I would. Anybody
Other
else?
comments from board members? Then I will entertain, please, a motion to allow our seniors to keep their laptops at no charge.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by
I'll
Jim,
second.
second by Alyssa. And I will now go through the roll again. Becky Fless, yay. Veronica Babcock,
Yay.
Nancy Fortier Brown,
Yay.
Linda Caputo,
Yes.
Jim Lothridge,
Yes.
Matthew Marshall,
Yes.
Alyssa Tracy,
Yes.
John Umland,
Yes.
Tony Veet,
Yes.
Kirsten Weed,
Definitely yes.
and Quentin.
Yes.
There we go. Perfect. Thank you.
I just want to say I really appreciate the gesture. It's very kind of you.
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
It's, now this is a conversation for another day, but I'll just throw this out there. We ought to think about making this a standard procedure. The kids that get their computers as freshmen, when they graduate, they leave with them, and it would give them an incentive to maintain them better, and it would give them an opportunity to just say thank you for being a good student. Even if they don't go on to college, it's a great piece of equipment to have. So, and it wouldn't cost us that much. I mean, as they grow, as long as it's with the student. But like I say, a different conversation for another day, but I think it's worth talking about next year.
Okay. It's in the minutes.
Thank
That'll
you.
be good. Sure. Okay, next on the agenda, consideration to modify graduation policy IKF pertaining to the community service requirement for seniors graduating at the end of the 2019-2020 year.
Yes, I'm going to ask Mr. Kempton to chime in. But as Mr. Kempton is working with his students to help ensure that they are ready to graduate and they've met all of the graduation requirements, the policy regarding community service is becoming a little bit of an issue for many of our students because they do not have the ability to perform community service right now because of the stay-at-home order. So, Mr. Kempton, would you like to speak to it?
Hello.
To the issue? Hi.
Sure. This started probably a couple weeks ago, and when I started getting emails and some phone calls from seniors and senior parents trying to figure out how they were going to finish up their community service with essentially the lockdown that's going on with the pandemic. They're having a difficult time trying to find ways to clean up their community service. So looking at the policy, we have basically a pacing guide of 15 hours per year for a total of 60 hours. So that would be 7.5 hours that they would they'd lose access to over the course of this semester. So my thought and my recommendation to the superintendent was to eliminate that out of the current students' requirements.
So it would be a 1-year modification for this group seniors, and that you would waive the graduation requirement for community service by 7.5 hours.
Chad, do we have many students that have not reached their community service requirements?
Yep.
So why do you think they wait so long? Because that seems like last minute to me. But I'm a more anal type person, but it doesn't seem. You give them plenty of time; they know it. It just, I think we should do it. I'm just curious why we have so many.
We have kids that have over 2,000 hours. And really what I find, my perception is that kids that do it and like it go crazy with it, and we'll have a number of seniors, like we always do, graduate with 100 or more hours. And some it's, doing it grudgingly, or they put it off because they've got, they prioritize other things to do, or maybe they, have a more difficult time finding opportunities that they like. I'm not sure in regards to that, but it's really, they either do it or they don't. We have a lot of kids that will come in after before their freshman year and have the majority of their hours done. And then they build off of that. So that's giving them the benefit of the doubt. The 7.5 hours is to cover this semester. If they were keeping pace with their hours in previous semesters, then they would have around 52.5 hours if they were a 4-year student. And so that was where the 7.5 came from.
Thank you.
How many students are we talking about?
I have the list over in my office, but I'm not in my office, so
That's okay.
there's probably 20-ish.
Okay. Okay. Let's see, somebody had a question. Oh, Tony, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Hey, thanks. So I know this is a 1-year adjustment we're making, and I guess that would sort of presume that we would be, we would presume that, freshman, sophomore, junior classes would be able to make up that 7.5 hours in the future. I don't know, I just want to kind of recognize they would be compressing their time, which is fine, it's what it is. What if we run into this kind of situation again? I guess we would just revisit this and adapt this yearly if we need to, or again in the future.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
I would think so. Yeah.
And I would be fine, Tony, with having this for the current students to reduce, to basically base their community service hours on 7 semesters versus 8.
Right.
And that way it's for everybody that, we're taking that off their plate. It's a difficult thing to do given the circumstances. So everyone's would be based on 7 semesters versus 8. And the incoming freshmen would regain that full component of the 8 semesters at 7.5 hours per semester.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, and I'd be supportive of that with the equity piece, the parity piece in there. Certainly, I want to support students with giving back to the community. I think there's a huge value to that, and maybe figuring out, virtual ways to give back. I don't even know what those are, but certainly that parity piece makes I think makes a lot of sense to me. Thank you.
I would agree with Tony.
Is that a motion?
So we need a motion to adjust the, to
Got a
adjust.
question?
Oh, I'm sorry, Jim, I forgot. Sorry, go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, with, actually two-parter, does the 7.5% or 7.5 hours, does that solve our problem with any seniors that might be short? And second half part of that is, are there any seniors that won't graduate with the 7.5 hours added in or deducted from the requirement?
So we have some that owe more than the 7.5 on paper. Many of those say that they've done it and they just haven't turned it in or having difficulty getting it turned in. I made a phone call to a local nonprofit today and talked with a representative there, and they're going to send me a copy of one of our seniors' community service hours. And as a result of that, they're going to be well over 100. They just put off turning in their work or documenting it. So it was just a matter of them doing a lot of community service, but just never taking the time to document it. So there are kids that have more than the 7.5 hours, but we're working with those kids to get their hours documented. And then those that aren't, that need hours, we're working on ways to get them some community service hours with, doing things outside, maybe raking a neighbor's lawn, or stacking some wood, or, helping out in the neighborhood. So,
Okay. I just have a problem with, and to Veronica's statement about questions about why haven't they done it, but the fact is that unfortunately, there's an awful lot of human nature that causes us to postpone doing things. Those that are, it helps if you're a type A person who really jumps in there and gets things done. But many of us, including me, will tend to procrastinate. And so I would be concerned about, you can get things done at the last minute, mop the best possible, but I can't imagine we would ever, at this, under these conditions, not graduate a student because they hadn't got all of their hours in. That's the only comment. Thank you.
Other comments?
Yeah, hey, this is John. Real quick, is there a way that we can word this that in the event this pops back up in the fall, winter, that we wouldn't have to address it again for next year's class as well? Or the incoming freshmen, sophomore, juniors, et cetera? That we would give discretion to Mr. Kempton or Superintendent Hopkins to be able to make this adjustment if this sort of remote, quarantine goes on again.
Yes, I think you could make a motion saying just that you would make a modification to have community service calculated only on 7 semesters, affecting the current high school students, and that you grant authority to the superintendent in conjunction with Mr. Kempton to make similar adjustments moving forward should we find ourselves in a similar situation due to COVID-19 next year.
I would make that motion. I make that motion.
Yeah, I will second Tony then.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
I just have a clarification. Are we making it just for the graduating class or for all classes?
All.
Okay.
All.
Okay. Thank you.
All right then. So we have a motion from
Tony
and seconded by
John.
Okay. All right then. Becky Fless is yes. Veronica Babcock?
Yes.
Nancy Porter-Brown?
Yes.
Linda Caputo?
Yes.
Jim Lothridge?
Yes.
Matthew Marshall?
Yes.
Alyssa Tracy?
Yes.
John Umland?
Yes.
Tony Veet?
Yes.
Kirsten Weed?
Yes.
And Quentin Martin?
Yes.
Great, thank you. All right then, moving along. Consideration to create a new special ed teacher position at Gardner Regional Middle School in the 2021 school year.
I will turn this over to Alicia in just a minute. A reminder that we discussed this position at the Finance Committee meeting the other day. Generally, I don't pull out these new type of positions that are being built into the budget. I don't pull them out separately. However, understanding that the budget is not going to be approved by taxpayers at least until sometime in July, this is a position that we need to be able to begin advertising for in order to find suitable candidates for the position. So that's why I'm singling this out and treating it a little bit differently. But I would turn it over to Alicia for her to discuss why this position is being requested.
So I am requesting this position because in the past we've talked about points of contact for special ed teachers, case managers being capped at 35, and that is per state regulations. Case managers at this point at the middle school are in the very high 20s, 28, 29. We do have a teacher in the 30s. That is without any new referrals or move-ins. And at most of the time, students go between case managers. So even though a teacher is case managing, if that child sees another special education teacher for service, it's counted on that teacher as well. So even though caseloads may look like 28, 29, points of contact are in the mid to upper 30s. And again, we can only have 35 points of contact legally. So bringing on an additional special ed teacher would bring those points of contact down. Any questions?
Questions, comments from board members?
I have a comment.
Go ahead, Jim.
I don't think we have any choice. I think it's mandated, and this is, we just can't not fill this position, and we better get it done now because there's a need right now. It's going to be especially next year. So I think it's a good idea.
Other comments? Then I would entertain a motion then to create a new special ed position at the middle school.
I make a
I'll
motion.
move. Okay, I'll second.
Motion by Veronica, second by Jim. And here we go through the list. Becky Fless, yes. Veronica Babcock?
Yes.
Nancy Forty-Brown?
Yes.
Linda Caputo?
Yes.
Jim Lothridge?
Yes.
Matthew Marshall?
Yes.
Alyssa Tracy? Alyssa? I'm not seeing her. Does anybody see her?
No.
John Umland?
Yes.
Tony Beat?
Yes.
Kirsten Weed?
Yes.
And Quentin Martin?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Next is the board chair's report. The only thing I have is the superintendent's annual evaluation, and by statute, we don't have to do it every year. And I'm wondering if during this particular time, when we're not in person and when we're not when business is not as usual and people are working so hard, to ask administrators and others to evaluate the superintendent with all the other things that they're trying to do to get through the year. I'm wondering what your thoughts are about foregoing an evaluation this year. I would entertain your comments.
This is Nancy. I feel like we can. However, I feel like if we did do one, it would be very favorable to her, to Superintendent Pat. So whatever you folks think is best, I'll support.
Other comments?
I agree.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry, Veronica.
No, go ahead, Tony. Go.
Thank you. I agree with Nancy. I'm comfortable with putting that off, or however we look at that. I don't know if we'd say it as a postponement or just cancel the evaluation this year. I do have a question. How does Pat feel about that?
I haven't really discussed that part. It's really entirely up to all of you as to what you want to do. I have felt supported by the board in the past. I know that we are giving a little bit of a break to other administrators and teachers given the situation that we're in. So it would be a nice reprieve given all the other work that we do. But at the same time, I understand that I am your one employee. And it's really important for you to be able to provide feedback to me. So I will honor and respect any decision that you make.
Hey, Veronica, you're next, right? I was going to say something.
No, I was just going to agree with Nancy and Tony. I think for this year, under all the circumstances and the extra work everybody's doing, that it's not really necessary because Pat is doing a really amazing job. So,
thank you.
Matthew?
Yeah, I think we should. And I say that because I think that a lot has happened over the past 2 or 3 months. And I think that to put that off and make it part of next year's evaluation would not necessarily be a pain in the neck, but I think it would be a little bit of a disservice. I think giving some positive or negative feedback would be great. I don't foresee any negative, frankly, but to ask folks to provide something brief that doesn't really take that much of an effort, you know, I don't think it's really would be all that hard. The work is on us, right, as a board. And I've got time. I don't know about anybody else, but I do.
Other board members?
I have a
I've not,
comment. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Tim. I
No,
was
go
going to
ahead.
say I've not done one. So is that the usual, Becky? I assume we gather documentation and provide it, or what is the process to go through that?
What happens every year, and I am not a proponent typically of not doing it. I believe that it's good feedback for the superintendent, and I think it's also part of what the evaluation is that Pat creates for us a lengthy document of the things that the accomplishments that she has and the projects that she's worked on throughout the year that we may or may not see because we're not in the buildings every day and we're not sitting at her elbow every day. So I am not typically a proponent of not carrying out this particular piece of work. I'm just trying honestly to be sensitive to her. And also part of what I ask for is for administrators who are supervised by her. She's their boss. So I'm particularly sensitive to those two items right now that that I don't want to burden the building administrators, any of our administrators, with one more thing that they just feel is on top of all the other things that they're required to do right now in an effort to make sure our distance learning continues and that our students are well cared for and protected and getting all the services met that they need. So I'm just trying to be sensitive. It's not and for any other reason than that.
That makes sense. Thank you. To Matt's point, maybe we can do sort of one half of it this year and offer our comments and maybe not poll the administrative staff and expect Pat to come up with that document like you mentioned. Just a thought. Thank you, Becky.
Sure. Jim?
Yeah, I don't think we need to do it this year, frankly. I've never have been bashful about it, expressing myself. And right now, I'm very happy with what Pat's doing in general. I wouldn't wish her job on anybody. So I don't think we need to bother with it this year. Next year, if we can deal with it then. So that's my feeling.
And I think next year, when it comes to it, we also have the opportunity to do. There's a lengthy model that we can create, and there's also a shortened one. And one of the things that we were going to do this year that fell off the table because of because of time and where we find ourselves now is that we were going to create a rubric that was more inclusive of the things that she really does, that our superintendent or that the job of superintendent for our district really does, so that it really encapsulates what our expectations are and what her responsibilities are, or what the responsibilities are. Take the person out of it and what the position is. And having not done that work, we would be using perhaps the 2+2 model or something else that we've used in the past. And I just want to be sensitive and do a good job. Because she's our one employer, I want to be a great employee. She's our one employee. I want us to be great employers of our superintendent. Pat, you look like you wanted to say something.
Well, I have an idea. I mean, based on the conversation, maybe it makes sense to have an executive session at a future time, maybe as early as next month or so, where we are able to discuss our relationship. So we have an executive session, and without creating a document, we're able to just have a private conversation about my performance, and I can share things with you and you can share thoughts with me, and we just won't put it in writing. That way we accomplish both. Those who want to have something in an evaluation and those who don't feel it's necessary. I think we can accomplish both of those wishes by having using that model.
So before we take a vote on this, can I get a thumbs up about that idea from board members? Thumbs up, thumbs down, or I can live with it? So let's see, there's my thumb. Thumbs up, thumbs down, or I can live with it.
And I don't think you need to take a vote per se. If
Okay.
the majority of the people are in favor, there's nothing formal then. It's just a conversation that we'll have.
Okay.
Okay.
So did we get a
Sounds
count
good.
of those thumbs? Do we need to put the thumbs up again? Everybody do your
I
thumb.
didn't, I can't see everyone on the screen, but of the people that I saw, there was no one that I saw who opposed it.
Okay.
Everyone was either I can live with it or I support it. If there's anyone who opposes it, I guess I would ask them to speak because I can't visually see everyone.
I can't visually see everyone either. So could you write in the chat box, perhaps? I oppose. If anyone opposes, just write that in the chat box. Seeing no numbers change, we'll move ahead then. Thank you. Oh, Nancy's camera's not working, but her thumb is up. Thank you, Nancy. All right, superintendent's report.
Okay, I have a number of things to give you a brief update on. The other night in finance, we began discussing the CARE Act funding to inform you about the money that we'll be receiving from the federal government. Today, Angela and Andrea participated in a virtual meeting discussing this further. So I'm going to turn it over to Angela first and ask Angela to kind of share with you any information that the board needs to hear regarding our plans in using this money and the amount of money that we are potentially talking about.
Okay, great. So the CARES funding has been approved by the federal government. The state application was approved by the federal government, and the state received $43.7 million, which is 80% of their Title I allocation from the federal government. Of that amount, 91% will be distributed to schools based on what they thought would be based on a Title I formula. Currently, we do not know our exact allocation because there is a discrepancy between the federal statute that calculated the amount of money that each state would be awarded and then how those states can disperse those funds, and the guidance that was just recently issued by the United States Department of Education. The discrepancy lies in how they have to distribute funds to private schools through the public schools. And so the calculation is in conflict. As a result, we do not know our allocation. And until the federal government and the United States Department of Education resolve that, we won't know our allocation. What the state has tried to do, though, to help us prepare is provide us a visual of the application. So now we can look at the questions in the application and the budget template and prepare with an amount of funds that we don't know we have. But we can also think about what's allowed and what's not allowed, in hopes that when they can open that up, when they get this resolved, they can open that application and we can have a fairly quick turnaround. The state, as well as the commissioners for the school superintendents across the country and many other organizations are working tirelessly with the Department of Education to try to resolve this issue. With that being said, the funds that are coming are not to be used as replacement funds. So generally speaking, it's advised that we do not remove something from our regular budget, local budget, and replace it with these extra funds. Those just aren't allowable categories. The idea is that these funds would help us anticipate significant needs that we are going to have moving forward for one academic year as a result of the coronavirus and the stay-at-home orders, and the distance learning and student mental health and wellness and so on and so forth. When we receive the funds, we have to obligate them by September 1st, 2021, and then finally expend them by September 2022. So basically we have the year. On Tuesday at the Finance Committee, I provided you a list of some possible options of how we may spend those funds. At the same time, I also said that by Thursday, that may change, and it has. We learned recently that there is guidance forthcoming. It has not yet been published. We're not aware of it, about how we'll need to operate our schools in the fall. Thinking about anticipating what that guidance might be, we needed to start thinking about how to redistribute the funds that we may get. So currently, the thinking is to not have a literacy coach in this budget, and instead to have supplies set aside for additional transportation needs that may be arising as a result of possible reconfigurations of how we'll have to run school, and PPE supplies for our staff. Now, this again this could change tomorrow because the guidance hasn't come forward. The state is working diligently to try to provide all of these services as much as they can to all of our schools. Target. The other areas that we would like to see using these funds would be in the area of technology. As we go through this distance learning process now, and when we have a chance to reflect with our teaching staff about the experience and with our communities, we recognize there's going to be some needs to make a distance learning or remote learning experience more effective for our learners, and that will require some additional software or hardware. And so we're trying to reserve some funds specifically for that, as they are not currently allocated in our technology side of the budget. Additionally, we will have COVID-19 impacted remediation. So as you know, students are learning at a different pace, and that pace is entirely dependent upon our ability to deliver that instruction and students' ability to attend to that instruction given all of their other demands on their time and their energies. And so we anticipate having to increase our extended school year learning program, which is our summer learning program for certain identified students. And we have set aside funds to allow that program to double in size summer of 21. We've set aside some money for compensatory education, which basically means if we haven't, if for some reason we need to support learners in ways that we didn't realize we weren't supporting them fully this year, then we have to set aside some funds to kind of make up for that. An academic intervention academy, which will be an after-school intervention and remediation support to enhance the already changed practices we'll be engaged in during school to support intervention and remediation, in hopes that we can catch up learners more efficiently and effectively before the summer comes. Social and emotional learning and trauma-based learning for staff, and transition training, how to transition our students effectively after 6 months or more of being out of the public school setting. And classroom supplies, replenishing materials or book sets that we sent home to in the best interest of our students and might not get back. So we had to set aside some funds for that. So currently that's the thinking. Again, this is draft thinking. It's changing on a daily basis. We don't have all of the guidance available to us. And the funds have to be spent following guidelines that support ESSA, or Elementary Secondary Education Act, the Perkins Act, the IDEA Act, and the McKinney-Vento Act, as well as a few additional allowable features such as sanitization or the PPE supplies, cleaning, and some features around transportation. You have questions? And maybe Andrea has something to add too. She has a different lens on this than I do.
So
Andrea?
from where I stand, the objective of the meeting was to discuss the implementation of the grant. One of the things that they wanted to make sure is, or they wanted to recommend that we do not use the funds for ongoing purposes like personnel. They recommended using the funds for one-time purchases. And the recommendation was also to make sure that the business manager was involved, so that expenditures that were made would not further reduce allocations through the ED 279. So if we move things like transportation, those additional expenditures would not, if you remember, the part of the ED 279 that is expenditure driven, one of those is transportation. So if we move all of those funds, all of those additional funds into the CARES Act, we wouldn't see that through the funding model. So there were discussions such as that, and just how to be careful when picking and choosing what to fund through the CARES Act.
I was in a meeting yesterday with the executives of Maine School Management and with the commissioner and the deputy commissioner and some other folks from the other, I can't tell you all the organizations, but one of the things that Pender said was that the guidance from the federal government, the federal DOE, does not match the statute with regard to how private and public schools and charter schools will be in part paid out of this money.
So that's the issue that needs to be resolved before they can share the allocation for that, or the portion of funds that each district will be receiving. So basically, the original plan was that schools would receive their funds based on their Title I model, which is based on your free and reduced lunch rate. And if you share or pay for students in a private school within your communities, then it would be still based on that rate, which is how Title I works.
Right.
That's in statute. But the guidance that came forward actually said, no, we want you to disperse the funds based on the number of students at the private school versus the number of students at the public schools. So that's much more favorable to the private schools than
Correct.
the Title I model.
Correct. Yes.
And because of that discrepancy, it has to be resolved so that no one's out of compliance.
Thank you.
And it will change the amount of money that different districts will get depending on which calculation they have to use.
Right. And Pender was saying that statute trumps guidance. That's her opinion, but we'll see how that. Okay, thank you. And I'm attending another meeting on Sunday at 4 for another update. So I'll hopefully you'll know more than I do. But anyway, thanks.
So that's an update on the CARES Fund. The other night, we also briefly discussed technology. The fact is that we received approximately 700 Chromebooks from the Department of Education at no cost to the district. And those Chromebooks are being made available for families with children in kindergarten through grade 3. Should they wish to have one. Terry, what would you like to add to that?
We've actually used them in some of the other grade levels because we needed spares. We were running really low, and some of our Chromebooks were in really not good enough conditions to go home. So we're using those. In addition, just this week, we got the hotspots from the DOE, and so we're not really sure with the hotspots whether we're going to need software or not. We did have to buy a little, probably $17,000 worth of software for the Chromebooks. So that's kind of where we're at with that. Angela and I had talked about asking the teachers what they needed to improve online learning. And so that's kind of our plan.
Great, thank you. All right, next on the list is just to make sure that I'm keeping you in the loop, that there are many pockets of groups and individuals who are beginning to discuss next year and what next year may look like for the start of school. There's a lot of speculation, yet there's no information yet. And so today I was in a meeting with all of my colleagues, superintendent colleagues, and it was made pretty clear that if phase 3 as it currently stands is still in place by the end of August when school starts, then school is not going to be able to start as we know it, because it limits us to just 50 people maximum in a gathering. So we'll have to see whether the phases change as time goes along. But what we're being directed to do is to begin thinking about and planning for multiple options, because we don't know what the fall will look like. One option is to plan for school just simply resuming, that we'll go back to where we were prior to the pandemic. I don't think that that's realistic, but that's certainly one option. There is consideration we have to give should the school buildings not reopen in September, and that we have to continue providing education remotely. There's also talk that if the schools do open, but we have to adhere to the social distancing, what is that going to look like? Are we going to have to modify how and when we instruct our student population? Do we do it on a rotating basis? Maybe at the high school, you have only freshmen and sophomores come in one day. You have juniors and seniors on a different day, just so that we can ensure the social distancing is required. The other thing we need to be prepared for and think about is, what if school opens and then it closes again? How are we going to respond in that situation? So we are also anticipating that all students and all staff will have to wear masks. So as Angela mentioned, with the CARE Fund, we'll probably have to dedicate some money towards the purchase of PPEs for both faculty and for our students as well. With all of that, we have to think about busing. How do you socially distance on the bus? Does that mean we're going to have to add more routes? Do we encourage families who have the ability to drive them to school versus taking the bus in order to assist us with that social distancing? We don't know the answer. And what about cleaning? Right now we have our buildings are being cleaned thoroughly on a regular basis, but what does that look like when we have students and adults in the building, throughout the building? How do we thoroughly clean it every single night to make sure that it's sanitized and ready for students and staff to return the very next day? So I don't have answers to any of those questions. I just want to make sure that you understand that these are the types of questions that we're going to have some answers to and to begin planning for and anticipating. I don't know when the answers will come. If they come sometimes in August, we can't wait until August to begin thinking about in a thoughtful way, how are we going to respond? So in the next few weeks, administrators will be meeting and considering what is our plan A? What does that look like? How do we respond? What's our plan B and how do we respond? And we will definitely need school board members, staff members, and others to be a part of that thinking. Now, Becky just indicated that she is on participating with a group of people at the state level. And this is what they're doing. This is part of her charge, is to be on this committee to begin discussing what the options are and to potentially provide guidelines and various guidance to school districts so that every individual school district isn't making it up by themselves. We would like some general guidance so that we across the state, or at least regionally, can put forth a plan that is relatively consistent as much as we can. So that's really all I have on this particular matter. I just wanted to make sure that you understand that we are not currently anticipating that we're just going to return in September and go back to providing education in exactly the same manner before COVID-19. It's going to be a new world for us, and we don't yet know what that's going to look like. So. All right, speaking of that, plans for graduation. I'm certain our seniors, their parents, and other community members are anxiously awaiting what the plans are going to be for graduation. Just this week, we received some guidelines and some guidance from the Department of Education. So Mr. Kempton has been working very diligently to try to find a plan that honors what we're hearing from our seniors, that they would like some type of face-to-face graduation ceremony so that they can be with their peers, but doing it in a manner, of course, that makes us adhere to the governor's guidelines. So Mr. Kempton is here, I believe, and I would turn it over to him if Mr. Kempton, you want to just kind of walk through your current thinking for graduation and class day.
Okay. I was in a meeting today with principals from around the state and people from Department of Education and the MPA. And there was a lot of discussion with the representative from the Department of Education in regards to the guidelines that are out there that we received the other day, essentially saying that the 50-person max is the route we have to go, whether it's inside or outside, which obviously for the bigger schools and the medium-sized schools like us with 130 students, that creates a significant challenge. So I was pretty, I guess, lack of a better word, frustrated with the fact that right now we can have 100 people in a Walmart or a Lowe's or a Home Depot, but we're being restricted to 50 people in an outdoor event on the football field. But there's really nothing that we can do about that. From what I understand, I voiced my concern in the meeting to the rep in the meeting, but right now the guidelines are the guidelines, and we have to come up with a plan that hopefully is something that the kids will like and will be meaningful for them and something they'll remember. So what I found out is that on the campus, we can do something where we put people into mods or into pods where we can have, with our group, we can have groups of up to 50 people, and we can rotate them through so that they're not all in the same spot at the same time. And so with our group, what I'm looking at is potentially setting up 10 groups with 15 graduates in each group. And we'll talk about how they select those groups. I'm thinking they might be able to select the group that they want to be in so that they're seeing their friends, their closest friends, graduate when they get up on the stage, along with 2 parents or 2 caregivers each. And that way, their parents can be with them and they can be with a small group of their friends. And we'll run mini graduation ceremonies for each group. And we can rotate the groups through that mini ceremony on the football field on Hope Field. It's something similar. I've been talking, a friend of mine is Mark Tinkham, who was the principal at Halldale. And Mark and I have been talking quite a bit lately. And he's got about 75 graduates, and he's kind of doing the same thing. He's using his soccer field, his baseball field, and softball field, I believe. And he's going to rotate groups through a mini ceremony like ours. His ceremonies, I think he's going to have 5, obviously because he's got fewer kids. And that's really the current thinking that I've been talking about with him, and I've also obviously talked about this quite a bit with Pat. So what I'd like to do is I want to get some more feedback from the graduates and some parents and get that feedback, but knowing that we have guidelines that we have to follow to meet the state guidelines, I guess.
And what about class day? You plan to do that virtually, correct?
So we're going to do academic awards will be virtual. So we're going to do that online. And I've got typically all my department chairs will give out their academic awards based on their content areas, as well as some specialty awards. I would take class day and blend that into graduation. And essentially what we will do, or my current thinking is that when a student comes up to be recognized and earn and get their diploma, it would be, okay, it's Pat Hopkins. She is the recipient of XYZ scholarships in the amounts of, whatever they are. She is a National Honor Society member for 2 years, and she is receiving her academic accords for NHS French 4 and 4 years of band.
Mm-hmm.
So going through and packaging everything that we can get in there to celebrate. She also exceeded the standard with 200 hours of community service and, those things. So it's just a matter of trying to package things into one event and, again, recognizing kids for all the things that they have accomplished.
Yeah, I have a quick comment when it's my opportunity, I guess. Can I go now, I guess?
Yes.
So obviously this is a one-time deal in kids' lives. And I think that considering we have such a great facility at Hope Field with a lot of space, what would, and I understand the state rules and the governor's guidelines, but is there any way we could request, we could come up with a plan that would show them that we could pull this off with proper social distancing, PPE, whatever is required, um, in a plan that would have them actually consider letting us do it. Potentially maybe limiting tickets. I know typically, at the Civic Center, you have anybody and anybody can come. Maybe limiting it to immediate family for folks coming for each student, and maybe getting Munzing Media to stream the graduation online, potentially for those folks that can't attend. But I think there's always a way forward, and if we don't ask, if we don't try to get a waiver, or we don't try to get somebody to say yes, certainly we're not going to get a yes if we don't ask. I don't know what the guidelines are, whether there are going to be any exceptions made, but I think we could come up with a plan where we keep in mind the social distancing, and I think we could pull this off. I don't know how anybody else feels about it, but if we don't ask, certainly not going to be told yes.
So Matt, I have already spoken to the Commissioner of Education. I reached out to her and asked for clarification on the differentiation between the big box stores, and why they get to have 100, and if we're outside, why can't we have more individuals on our fields? And we had spoken with Mr. Kempton about using maybe the soccer field, the football field, the baseball field, so that we could do the social distancing. And we were told that these are the guidelines, that while it sounded like a good idea, these are the guidelines. I know Chad has had a follow-up conversation, and then Becky and I have also discussed just today this committee that she's on, and whether she can go back to key leaders who are on that committee and ask for that clarification to see if there is any flexibility, as you're indicating, that would allow us to have more people at any one time on that field. But so far, we're hearing no. Chad, I'm sorry I cut you off. I didn't mean to.
No, I agree with you 100%, Matt, in that I know that we could pull this off and practice social distancing. I measured out the football field as far as square footage and how many people we can fit on there. Reasonably, even I put them in groups where families could be in their own little section. I've looked at it with graduates, being seated in the front and then having areas for people to stand behind. And yes, we are going to do, Munzing Media is going to live stream it. We've already got that in the works, and he's ready to go with it. But I agree with you 100%. I think quite honestly, it's ridiculous that an outside event is being held to 50 people or less. And when I asked in the meeting today, the response was, well, those are the guidelines and that's it. So I get pretty frustrated and pretty fired up, and I have to take a deep breath a lot, because it just is I completely understand and respect the social distancing and the situation we're in. Don't get me wrong. The last thing I want to do is get anybody sick. But in an outside event where people will practice social distancing, we'll wear face masks. We can glove up if we need to. These kids want to see each other graduate, and I think we can do it. But whether we get, so far, our requests have gone nowhere.
Jim, you had a question?
Yes. At any given time, at any one of these mini ceremonies you're talking about, are you telling me that probably the maximum as it stands right now would be 50 people at a location at any given time?
Yes.
Yeah. Are we considering blended families too? Mom and dads that now have other partners? Is that being considered or taken into your account for setting this up?
So what I'm trying to do, or what I tried to do, is get as many graduates together as possible. So with the 50, we're looking at 15 graduates, 2 family members per graduate, which makes 45.
45, yeah.
And then you have Pat, Becky, and myself. So there's 48. And, I'm not including staff who typically are at graduation, but you can't put 60 staff members in this place and then you wouldn't have room for anybody.
Yeah.
So staff can't be there. Other administrators can't be there. They can all watch it, live stream or whatever, but to maximize the spaces for students, and for their parents to be able to see them get their diploma, that's the thinking. And yes, it is going to be a conflict for split families if if mom and dad have been divorced and remarried, and there's 4 adults that would like to be there versus 2. I don't have an answer for that.
I
Thank
really
you.
like the fact that Chad has reached out to students, to seniors, to parents, asking for their input on what's most important. He's trying to accommodate that, and he is now trying to pull a small group of parents and students together to kind of refine and revisit the plan that he's putting forward, so that there may be other thoughts and input that could adjust this plan to some degree. Now, Mr. Kempton, Kirsten is asking a question. Are there still going to be valedictorian and salutatorian speeches?
As of what I have right now, in the feedback that I got from parents and students, and there was about 200 respondents. I'm just going to pull it up on my laptop so I can run through the numbers. But essentially I'm just looking to see if I can find it. Of course, every time you try to find something that's here and now, you can't find it. But essentially what the feedback was is that they want to march in. They want to be recognized for their accomplishments, and they want to receive their diplomas. Those were the 3 big items. Having a guest speaker was the lowest favorable. Not that it's a bad thing, but that was the least important. And then next to the least important was faculty and student speeches. So they're looking at marching in, being recognized, and earning their diplomas were the big ticket items.
So this is, again, a work in progress. We will keep you posted. I really look forward to Mr. Kempton working with students and parents, and we will see how this changes and modifies over the next week. I bet next week this is going to look a bit different than it does today. But any final questions for Mr. Kempton?
I have a comment.
Go ahead.
Okay. Thinking about the salutatorian and the valedictorian, is it possible that we could pre-record this and then make it available as everybody is getting ready for this, put it on at each location and broadcast it to each of these mini ones? Keep these speeches short, more so than we usually have, but that way at least we can recognize those students who have really gone over and above board with their studies. So maybe we could do something like that. I'd like to see something done for them.
And that's further input that I'll get, when I'm looking at pulling a group of 10 to 15 people together. Anytime you go too far past that, it tends not to work that well. So I'm going to put a survey or questionnaire out to seniors and parents of seniors tomorrow morning and basically just get a sign up. If they're interested in serving on the committee, mark yes and give me their name. If they're not, but they want to give further input, then there's a place for that as well. So if they either don't have time or aren't interested in working on a committee, they can at least provide the committee with some input.
Thank you. That sounds good.
Thank you, Mr. Kempton. Summer meals. I'm just notifying you that it is not the intent of the school district to continue providing meals during the summer. Presently, the Boys and Girls Club, they provide the summer meals, and in a conversation that our director of nutrition had with the Boys and Girls Club, it is their intention to continue with that program this summer. So we've been asked whether we're continuing, and I just wanted to make sure that you knew it is not our intention to do so. If we were to do it, then we would have to advertise and hire folks, because it is definitely outside of the contract of all of our school nutrition staff. So, okay. The only other thing that I have is just an information piece that I want to bring to your attention so that you understand the process for future board meetings. And it has to do with executive sessions. So tonight we have 3 executive sessions coming up, and there will not be a vote taken out of any of those executive sessions. So that when we are done with this meeting, or this portion of the public meeting, we're going to close out this Google Meet to the public. We'll take it offline because no other action will occur. However, there are times, and probably as early as the June meeting, there will be times when you are going to take action as a result of an executive session. So I just wanted to be able to kind of communicate what that process will be. So what will happen is that when you vote to go into executive session, this meeting will remain open and it will remain live streamed. You will vote to go into executive session, and then board members, you will leave this particular meeting. So it will stay running, but you're going to leave it. There's going to be another meeting invite. You're going to log into that meeting. That meeting will not be open to the public so that you can have your executive session. When you're done with the executive session, you will get out of that meeting. You will re-log into this meeting, and then you will take action. You will take your vote. Then if we have multiple executive sessions, you will repeat that process. You will log out of this. You will log into a separate one. Then when you're done with that, you will log back into this meeting. So there will be times for the public when this meeting will be live streamed on the website, and there won't really be anything for them to see. So I'll ask Terry, maybe we can put photos up or something, so that they know that the link is still working. It's just you are in executive session. All right. So I will work with Terry to make sure that we communicate that, but it will mean that in the future, you could receive multiple invitations to various Google Meets. So we'll have to make sure that we get each one identified correctly, so you know which one is the regular meeting, which one's executive 1, executive session 1, executive session 2, executive session 3, etc. Does that make sense? Okay, so I just wanted all of you to know that, and I wanted the public to understand that as well. So with that, that is my report. I don't have anything else. As you know, Martha Allen is here, my assistant. She has been manning the phones, and no one has called in to make a public comment. I've also been manning my email, and I have not received any emails to the school board in terms of this particular meeting. So there are no additional public comments to report. So that means the next step then, Becky, is our executive session. Now we have 3 executive sessions School board, it is 8:01. Your policy has the board meeting open for 3 hours. That means we need to be done either by 8:30, so you're not in violation of your policy, or you are going to have to vote to extend our meeting so that you can stay longer. Okay, so I don't know if you wish to extend the meeting now, or you just want to make sure that you adhere to the 30-minute timeline.
I say adhere to the 30-minute timeline.
Okay, I think we can do it.
Yeah, we can do this.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
I would like a motion then to go into executive session.
So moved.
Moved by Tony, seconded by
I'll second it. Nancy.
Thank you, Nancy.
And Becky, for clarity and for transparency, this executive session that you just voted to go into is to discuss a legal matter, 1 MRSA 4056E. And I would ask that Alicia remain on the line so that she may join the board as a part of this executive session.
So we have a motion and a second.
Motion.
Questions or comments?
Second.
Okay, so Becky Fless, yes. Veronica Babcock,
Yes.
Nancy Fortier-Brown,
Yes.
Linda Caputo,
Yes.
Jim Lockridge,
Yes.
Matthew Marshall,
Yes.
Alyssa Tracy,
Yes.
John Umland,
Yes.
Tony Veet,
Yes.
Kirsten.
They don't vote because they don't go into executive session with you.
Oh, bye, kids. Temporary. Okay. Does anybody need a 2-second or 2-minute break, or are we all good to go?
Good to go.
Okay.